time. In terms of things like homework, school projects, all of those sorts of things, trying to help sit down with a child, teachers can do this and parents, to break up those tasks and make them into smaller daily tasks for the child. Really difficult for a child when they kind of see, oh, I have this giant book report and it's due in 2 months. The night before is when they're going to start it if you leave it up to them. So to help them know what they're going to break that up to be, and so, okay, on Monday night you're reading chapter 1, and Tuesday night this is going to happen, and so on. Externalizing motivation. We're going to talk a lot about that today. A lot of times we can get stuck on, he should just want to do wonderful things just to please me, or he should want to do wonderful things because it feels really good to get a great report card. That's not really happening for a lot of kids, but especially kids with ADHD who are really more responsive to a bit larger rewards and consequences than other kids. So they need it to be something kind of salient so that they actually notice it. So how do you externalize that for them? So this is the positive thing that's going to happen when you do well, and this is the mildly negative thing that's going to happen when you're not doing well. And also, in terms of schoolwork and homework, permitting some, external manipulation of task information. So your younger kids are going to do better in terms of being able to see that homework and work with that homework. And all of a sudden, you're going to have their attention in school if that's the day that you're building the giant volcano at the front of the classroom that you're putting the vinegar and the baking soda in. All of a sudden, the attention span will be really good because you're very exciting and interesting, and it's external. And they can touch it. So keeping things externalized as much as possible. Now, this is a hypothetical graph, but it's based on a great deal of research. For both teachers and anybody who works with ADHD, and especially for parents, when we think of the maturity level of kids with ADHD, when we think of their ability to kind of self-regulate, it is really important to remember that on average, until they hit kind of 24-ish, they're about 30% behind same-aged kids. Okay? So that means that, when you're working with a 12-year-old in your classroom and you're thinking, he's really immature, like he doesn't seem to have the same maturity level or decision-making skills as the other kids in the class. He doesn't, and he won't until those, sort of mid-20s years. So they are going to be behind. That's important for parents in terms of safety planning. So parents should be saying to themselves when their child is 16, okay, he's 16 on his birth certificate, and yeah, okay, Nova Scotia says he can get his driver's license, but what do I think as a parent? Does he have the decision-making skills and ability to sort of self-regulate that another 16-year-old has? Most parents of kids with moderate to severe ADHD are going to say, oh, absolutely not. He's sort of still down in those, 11, 12-year-old kind of years, and nobody would agree to give a big giant car to a 12-year-old. They would know that would lead to safety concerns. So that's going to be really important in terms of expectations. It's also really important, especially for parents, when things seem kind of hopeless and frustrating, to remind yourself that he will catch up in terms of that sort of maturity and those self-regulation skills. He is gaining. He's not always going to seem like, he's not going to always seem as young as he does now. And so kids with ADHD do mature just like other kids. It's just sort of at a slower rate, and they are about 30% behind other kids. And it starts to peter out and become more similar in the adult years. So influential setting factors in ADHD. So what makes a difference in terms of how kids perform with ADHD? One of the most annoying things for kids with ADHD, and they tell me it often, is that moms and teachers and dads get a little bit mad at them because they say, you could do it one day. How come on Tuesday you were good, and Wednesday you were bad, and Thursday you paid attention, and Friday you never did a thing? And it's really frustrating for adults. It's also really frustrating for those kids. So it's important to know that kids with ADHD are up and down in terms of their performance, but there's a lot of factors that influence that. And you can try to manipulate some of those factors to have things go better for your child. Fun versus boring. Anybody who's ever worked with a kid with ADHD knows that that's certainly a big issue. Of course, it's a big issue for everybody and every child. Nobody likes going to something boring. The difference is that if I don't have ADHD and I have to sit through a really boring presentation, or for kids, sometimes that's maybe the long sermon in church on the weekend or whatever. Some of us can sort of say to ourselves, this is boring, but I'm just going to, tune out, or I can do this, I'm going to force myself to listen. A lot more difficult when you have ADHD. If something's fun, if something's really interesting, it's easier to stick with it. Repeated information, especially some academic information, tends to go better than just hearing it once, because if I tuned out and I missed half of it the first time, it gives me another chance to get that information. In terms of consequences, and those are both positive and negative, immediate works a lot better than delayed consequences. And the reason for that is that it's going to be a lot easier for the child to understand why they got that consequence and learn from that if it's really soon in the moment after the behavior. So if I'm a child with ADHD and I did something fabulous and you want to reward me for that, you want to give me that praise or that reward right away. As opposed to if you wait till the end of the day, I've now thought about 5,000 other things, I've done 10,000 other things, maybe I've done lots of negative things since then, and by the time you tell me about it, I don't remember what you're even telling me about. Same thing goes for the negative consequences. Frequent feedback goes a lot better than infrequent. Kids with ADHD need a lot more frequent, in-the-moment feedback about how they're doing. You're doing really well right now. Little hand on the shoulder as you're walking by in the classroom. Some eye contact, whatever that is. Thumbs up, high five, whatever needs to happen to keep it kind of frequent. It doesn't have to take long, but some sort of feedback on how well they're doing, or this isn't going well right now, I need you to change this behavior. Again, in terms of consequences, kids with ADHD unfortunately need sort of larger, more significant consequences in terms of both positives and negatives, and there's a great deal of research to back that up. So they're not quite as responsive to the lesser sort of positives and lesser negatives. And so what you want to do at first when you're giving positives is to give something tangible, some sort of little tiny reward, but keep giving praise and that sort of thing along with it, and then start to back up the rewards and make them work longer to earn those rewards, so that they're not expecting something every time. So have that plan over time. And kids with ADHD do a lot better supervised than they do when they're unsupervised. So they do respond to knowing somebody's eyes are on me, there's an adult in the room, somebody's keeping a close eye on me. Kids with ADHD do significantly better one-on-one versus group. And that's an important thing to remember for parents, because sometimes it feels like, he's not that out of control at home, but it's just the two of us at home, or it's just three of us at home. It's important to kind of think, well, I wonder what he looks like in a group of 30 when there's lots of things going on. That's also important for people who are working in an office-based environment with kids with ADHD. Sometimes people will say, I took one look at him and I knew he didn't have ADHD. No. Not until you've chatted with that teacher and seen what that child looks like out in the real world does somebody know whether or not a child has ADHD. You want to know what that child looks like in a larger group settings. And it's wonderful that kids can do better in one-on-one, because that makes things helpful in knowing, okay, how do I teach them some of that stuff they missed in school or what have you. But group settings is a really interesting place to know how they're doing.